In the NBA, it's hard to stay on top for long. And that's the way that the league is designed through cap space and the format of the draft. Parity is paramount. And that often leaves teams with a decision to make. They have to choose whether they want to compete now in the moment or if they want to set themselves up for future success. But in perhaps the biggest trade in NBA history, the Los Angeles Lakers chose to do both. Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and this is Hollywood Luka Doncic. First of all, I want to set the context of this franchise. When it comes to organizations within the NBA, there are two that stand well above the rest in the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers. These are teams that have far and away the most championships in league history. And they're in these major markets that not only do they have passionate fans from that region, but the entire world as well. They also just have a lot of eyes on them as a result of that. And that leads to a lot of stars wanting to go to these places. And the Lakers are a prime example of that. It feels like there's always a star in town in LA. Whether it's a Kareem, a Jerry West, Kobe Bryant, Wilt Chamberlain, Shaquille O'Neal. The list just keeps going. And most recently, they are rolling with the pairing of a top 2 player in NBA history in LeBron James and a player that has the potential and all the talent in the world to be a top 10 player of all time when it's all said and done in Luka Doncic. And you might hear a trade mentioned as a blockbuster move. This goes beyond that. Never before in NBA history have 2 All-NBA players been traded for each other mid-season. It was shocking. It was a move that nobody saw coming, and it was one that has major implications for the Lakers. This is a franchise that is no stranger to making savvy acquisitions. Kobe, for example, was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, but he obviously goes on to become one of, if not the greatest Laker of all time. However, this was a move that, although there had been precedent for it by a former Lakers move, it was one that kind of seemed like a relic of the past, something that we really wouldn't see again. Because recently, the Lakers front office has really been catering to their star player in LeBron James. And everything besides that is kind of secondary. And this is a move that is more reminiscent of the former Lakers guard. One in which they're going to do whatever it takes to win. They're going to make whatever move they need to make to ensure themselves success. You don't go too long in LA without a major star there. And with LeBron James on the tail end of his career, why leave yourself in purgatory when instead you can go and make a trade for a top 3 player in the league who just turned 26 years old. 25 at the time of the trade, turning 26 in Lakers purple and gold. And for a franchise as prestigious as the Los Angeles Lakers, it is so crucial that you seek out opportunities like this. From all the reports that came out, it was of the idea that Rob Pelinka really kind of convinced Nico Harrison that this was a good trade and one that would be beneficial for the Mavs. And when you're the Los Angeles Lakers, you take the opportunity up every single time. Lest you become a team like the Chicago Bulls, a franchise who had the other top 2 player in NBA history, Michael Jordan, play for them. But beyond that, their history isn't as storied as a team like the Lakers. And you don't want to put yourself in that position because if you're the Chicago Bulls, this is a franchise with lofty historic expectations. And so every year following that, if you struggle to live up to that, even being a middling team that might be in the play-in, might be the 8th seed, that looks like a major disappointment. And especially being in such a big market, the Lakers have to be in contention. Especially with the Clippers moving to their own arena, the Lakers have to step up and continually be the big brother and not be another organization that was once so great, but in recent times has not necessarily adjusted well. And the Lakers absolutely did that with the move for Luka Doncic. So that's kind of the historical implications. And then we get to Luka Doncic on the court. And that what especially that means for him playing alongside LeBron James. Because when the move was made, as much as it seemed like the Lakers had won the trade, it kind of looked like a move that was securing their future post LeBron James. And while it absolutely does do that, there was a little bit of a question of, in the moment, how good can this team be? Whether it's because of the roster shakeup mid-season, or just the fact of the fit between these two. These are two very, very talented offensive players, great playmakers, and great scorers. But coming with that, they're very, very ball dominant. And throughout the first couple games, you could really see where those questions were coming from. Now, this is also due to Luka Doncic kind of playing himself into shape, but it wasn't necessarily that pretty to start out. And Luka was also on a minutes restriction, but even the efficiency didn't look too amazing. But as time has gone on, Luka's played a slightly larger sample size now, and this duo looks really good. Now, thinking about what they left behind in LeBron and AD, these are two guys who had the ability to play very well off of each other when things were going to the best of their abilities. You think back to that 2020 ring, they were perfect complements to each other. They were both forwards, so you had a star-studded front court, and LeBron could be the playmaker. And as time has gone on, maybe he wants to develop his jumper a little bit more. And maybe his defense isn't as good as it was back in prime Miami Heat LeBron James days, right? But Anthony Davis is a perfect complement to that. LeBron sets up AD with the lobs, and AD can carry his own shot as well. He can space the floor, especially during that bubble season, where they would ultimately go on to win a championship. But as time went on, these two players still played very well off of each other. But Anthony Davis, his spacing kind of declined, and he would never be as good a shooter as he was during that bubble run ever again. And so if you were ever to bring in another ball-dominant player, a la Russell Westbrook, the lack of shooting from number 0 would just make it very difficult to build around this team anymore. But then you bring in Luka Doncic, and him and LeBron are even better complements to each other in some assets, in some facets of the game. LeBron came out recently, said he's a natural wide receiver, and Luka Doncic, he's a natural quarterback. They find each other when they need it most, and even more importantly, they can execute when they get the ball. Because all that setup isn't for much if the guy on the other end can't handle it, if the guy on the other end is smaller than the moment. But these two have been great together, and the Lakers are rolling. And on the defensive end of the court, you could have some question marks given you have a 40-year-old LeBron and Luka, who's never been known for his abilities on that end of the floor. But the Lakers, as a unit, they've built a very solid roster around these two. They've got 4 spacers, and they've got some defenders. And with that, they've been one of the better defensive teams in the entire NBA under a Luka Doncic and LeBron James-led team. So the fit between these two has been perfect. And then, of course, there's historical implications of Los Angeles. And so with that, we're kind of talking about the now, especially in terms of the two-man game between Bron and Doncic. But then we get into the post-LeBron era, because that's coming in a couple of years. And the way that LeBron has been playing, it doesn't look like Father Time is going to be catching up to him anytime soon. So when he retires, that's going to be on his own merit. His decision. The game did not leave him behind. No, rather he is going to leave the game behind. And when he does that, Luka Doncic is absolutely ready to take the reins for this Los Angeles team. So often, when you've got this star duo between an older player and a much younger one, so often a player got drafted into that situation. And so, with that, you don't necessarily know how it's going to pan out if they ever have to become the definitive number one option. And it's a little bit of a gamble to decide, hey, is this player just the perfect secondary piece, or do they have what it takes to lead this team in the future if need be? But with Luka Doncic, we got a sample size of him being the number one option, and it was pretty good. The Dallas Mavericks made it all the way to the finals last year, and over his career, Luka Doncic has been an incredible offensive player performer. You would be very, very hard pressed to find many better. But in years prior, consistently, Luka had been gassed in the playoffs, and with that, his defense took a decline to what was already not stellar. And then Dallas would not necessarily prepare themselves for that, and not build the best roster around Luka to be able to handle that. But last year, we saw what Luka could do with a team that was better oriented to his play style and his abilities. You had his co-star in Kyrie Irving, but then you had plenty of great role players and really good defenders as well. From even the lob threats and the Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford to guys like PJ Washington, everyone was bought in on this team. And when you build a proper roster around Luka Doncic, because at the end of the day, you can have your criticisms about any star player in the league, even someone like Giannis, right? Who is incredible on both offense and defense. You can make an argument about his 3-point shooting, right? The answer is always constructing a roster around them. No star is complete without the team that is oriented to their needs. And so, with that, what we saw from the Mavericks last year is that when you build a team around Luka Doncic, specifically around Luka as opposed to with Luka, in the sense of they play off of him well, and they know their roles, and they're ready to commit and execute, especially on the defensive end of the court, you can have someone really special with Luka leading your team. And so last year, I had question marks about Luka Doncic as a first option, as being a championship first option. And while they didn't win the finals, they really answered a lot of my doubts. And so eventually, LeBron is not going to be playing anymore, which is almost weird to say, right? Because he's been in the league for so long. He's been in the league since 4 years before I was born. And you look at how the Lakers were after Kobe Bryant, it took some years for them to build once again. And with this move, they are not only rolling right now, but they're ready for post LeBron. They're ready to build around Luka Doncic. They've already got a great defensive roster on this team around him and Ron. And it was time for Luka Doncic to take the reins. Not only have we already seen what he can do as the first option, when so often that's more of a gamble, we know how to build around him as well. And the Lakers are perfectly ready to do that. And even after LeBron James, in an era where it seemed like once he was gone, there were going to be a lot of question marks for this team, not a lot of sustainability for the future of this franchise. But in one move, they more than right the ship. And they set themselves up for success not just now, but for the next 15 years. Going from perhaps the most talented player that we've ever seen in the history of the NBA to yet another one. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you very much for listening. This is Hollywood Luka Doncic. And I hope it was enjoyable. Coming into this, I thought it was going to be really good. I didn't love it recording it. But I hope just kind of this was somewhat enjoyable, right? Um that's always the goal. And it's to a very small amount of followers, right? But we're trying to get better every time. I've strayed away from using a script before because I had one experience where it was kind of rough, and I just stuttered a lot. But I think I might go back to that because I think there were plenty of opportunities where this could have been even better. I was trying to get better every time, but if you kind of enjoyed and there was maybe some potential in this, I would love if you maybe, as a little bit of an investment, help the algorithm out, whether it's subscribing, liking, commenting, whatever it might be. Just your thoughts on how we can get better, and that's the goal every time. Thank you very much for listening. This has been State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts.